Forever. Dog.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Here comes the sun. Doodle-oo-doo. Here comes the sun. That's right. The sun is having a huge week. A huge week for the sun. Not since it burned the wings off that brazen little punk Icarus has the sun had such a big week. Oh, baby, the sun had a big week. First of all, Project Hail Mary premiered in theaters this weekend, a movie all about how bad it would be if the sun cooled off just a little bit. Just a little bit. If the sun was like, can I run the AC for just 5 minutes, please? I've been so hot for so long. Can I just get 5 minutes of AC, please? Doom, doom. Whoosh. Half the population of Earth dead. Dead. Because the sun needed to run the AC for 5 minutes. Unless Ryan Gosling and Rocky the Alien can save the day. That's what Project Hail Mary is all about. I can't wait to talk about it more later. Second, the same week that Project Hail Mary premiered, temperatures in LA hovered around 95 degrees all week. And even got as high as 102 right here in the Valley. Which means Ryan Gosling wasn't the only one on a press tour this week, baby. The Sun said, "This is my moment. This is my red carpet Liz Hurley in the safety pin dress moment." Could the Sun be the next James Bond? People are asking. I'm hearing rumors. To that effect. And apparently, the Sun loves ballet and opera. That's a reference to Timothée Chalamet's doomed Oscar campaign that already, I'm not going to lie, already feels out of date. The Sun loves ballet and opera. Loves it perhaps a little too much. The Sun thinks we should still have castratos in the opera. Men who have been forcibly castrated to preserve their prepubescent voices. That's what Timmy should have said. That's what Timothée Chalamet should have said. If Timmy had just come out and said, look, if Timmy came out on The View and said, look, I really messed up. I'm sorry I said that. I was just running my mouth. I'm on this endless press tour. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I love opera. I freaking love opera. I love it so much, I think we should still have castratos. If he said that, he'd be holding that little gold man right now. Best actor. Timothée Chalamet with a pin that says, bring back castratos. And speaking of castratos, Ryan Gosling is great in Project Hail Mary, this movie that we're talking about this week. And I'm, of course, referencing his signature high-pitched squeal, which gets rolled out in the first 30 seconds of Project Hail Mary, because movies are memes now. But despite that, Ryan Gosling is great in this movie. He's great. He's our most bankable movie star, and he's just cashing checks left and right in Project Hail Mary. Cashing checks. He said, I did Barbie, And now I'm ready for the solo album, baby. I'm ready for my Castaway moment. I'm the new Hanks, baby. You hear that, Colin? You hear that, Chet? I am your father's true son and heir. You hear that, Truman? The third son? I'm Daddy's favorite boy. I have enough effortless charisma to save the solar system, baby. And you were fine in Nuremberg. Now he's back to talking to Colin. But even if scientists were able to isolate Ryan Gosling's powerful and unique brand of charisma and convert it into a renewable energy source of its own, that still would not be enough. That still would not be enough to prevent the eventual, inevitable death of the sun. That's still a long way off, though. That's a long way off. The sun is currently 4.5 billion years old, even though its IMDb page says 3.5. That's a joke about actors lying about their ages, something they feel compelled to do because of our culture's sick obsession with youth. The sun is currently 4.5 billion years old, which means, assuming a total average lifespan of 10 million years, based on various scientific factors that I don't understand. But I looked it up, and the sun is expected to have a lifespan of 10 million years. So based on that, the sun is just now in our era, entering its middle age. Like me. The sun and I are in similar places in our lives. The impermanence of existence has started to really sink in. For sure, it started to really sink in. But death ain't here yet. Still a ways off. And of course, you never know that for sure. I'm not tempting death, okay? If you're listening, death, I'm sorry that I said Weekend at Bernie's is better than the Seventh Seal on our bonus show, Weekend at Bergman's. It is, of course. But I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings. And B, I'm not testing you. I'm not tempting fate. We're just talking about averages and lifespans and all of that. I could walk out of here tomorrow and get freaking T-boned by some sort of show car on the way to Universal Studios for storage. I could walk out of here and get T-boned by the freaking Flintstones mobile. Honorable death. But that's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about average lifespans. And on the average, the sun and I are both in our middle age. Which means we've lived a little while. We've lived a while, but we still got a while to go. The thing that is new about middle age, though, is that at a point, the years that you've lived start to outnumber the years you have left. That's a new thing in middle age. When you're in your 20s and you're doing the math, all right, when am I going to die? You're like, oh man, I might have 50, 60 plus years left. I don't even know what those numbers mean. I don't even know what it's like to be alive for that long, much less have that much time left in my life. I got all the time in the world, baby. But then when you get into your 40s and you do the math, and you're like, okay, 30, maybe 40 years, okay, that's a lot. But it's no longer unfathomable. I've lived that many years already. I know what it's like to live 30 to 40 years. And it doesn't feel that long in retrospect. So the situation starts to change a little bit. But we've still got time. We've still got time, the sun and I. The sun won't run out of hydrogen fuel for at least another 5 billion years, at which point it will expand into a red dwarf, likely swallowing the nearest planets, including the Earth, which at that point will have long ceased to support life. It's estimated that the Earth will support life for another 1 billion years, another billion years, at which point increased solar brightness will evaporate the Earth's oceans and destroy the majority of life that is left on the planet at that point. Here comes the sun indeed. But we've still got time, the sun and I. We've still got some time left to do something with our lives. I'm doing this show, Movie Dawg. I love doing this show. I love it because I find a real satisfaction in approaching it seriously and with purpose. And sure, there's a level of hubris. Speaking of Icarus, how long ago were we speaking of Icarus? There's a level of hubris in just one day waking up and declaring yourself a film critic and then doing a podcast in your office where you just shout to the world that you were disappointed by The Moment starring Charlie XCX. There's a level of hubris in that kind of endeavor. And there is, of course, the possibility when you show up to the office 2 hours early to record a serious review of The Moment. There is, of course, the distinct possibility that you've wandered into a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis that you've decided to broadcast publicly on the internet. But that's always there, that possibility. Whenever you try to do anything new or creative after 40, there is always the possibility that you're Rupert Pupkin building a talk show set in your mom's basement. But so what? So what? Maybe midlife crises. Maybe midlife crises are underrated. Maybe they're underrated. Maybe Rupert Pupkin's tragic flaw was not that his ambition and desire for success outpaced his talent. Maybe his tragic flaw was that he didn't understand the beauty of what he created in that basement. The basement didn't have to be just a means to an end. The basement could have been the thing itself. And the debate about the ending, I'm of course talking about Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy. Absolute masterpiece. A word that we will return to later in this episode. And the debate about the King of Comedy's ending is always, is it real or not? Is Rupert Pupkin's long-awaited ascension to celebrity status, which is told to us through a montage of magazine covers and television appearances, is that real or not? Or is that in his head? Are we still in the fantasy? That's the big question that gets debated the most about the King of Comedy's ending. But maybe the more interesting question is, assume it's real. Assume it's real. How does it make him feel? Is he satisfied? Is he happy? Because that final shot of Rupert Pupkin basking in the applause of an actual late night audience, assuming it's real, That final shot is very Graduate-like in its depiction of someone getting what they thought they wanted. There is a flicker of doubt in the final frames of The King of Comedy that is very interesting and kind of renders the question of whether the ending is real or not renders it irrelevant. Assume it's real. That doesn't mean he's happy. That doesn't mean he's satisfied. I will say, the reason I'm doing this show now, Movie Dawg, and not, I don't know, years ago. Well, there's a lot of reasons. But one reason is because I am finally in love with the thing itself. I love the show itself. I love taking it seriously. I love when it's Saturday night and I have to sit down and write a meaningful speech about Scream 7. I love weighing my soul in the crucible of Crime 101. It's a mode of expression that makes sense to me and that I find meaningful. I love the language of film criticism. I find that I'm able to express a lot through the language of film criticism. I enjoy the act of doing this, and I have respect for the act of doing this. When I was younger, I remember there being more of, to some degree, more of a terror in doing things that were aspirational or creative, because when you do them, you find out the result of doing them. And sometimes the result might be that you weren't as good at the thing as you thought you were, or the thing was not meant to be after all. Or at least that's the fear. That's the prohibitive fear. The fear that keeps you outlining the great American novel for years rather than just knocking out a short story and letting somebody read it. But now that I'm a little older, now that I'm relatively the same age as the sun, that fear has subsided quite a bit because I just love doing the thing. Regardless of the result, I love doing the thing. It makes me feel alive. I don't know what to say. I love it. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to hear it, does it make a sound? Of course it makes a fucking sound. It goes donk. If nobody reads your book, is it still a book? Of course it's a book. If nobody comes to your play, is it still a play? Hell yes, it's a play. And I'm not saying that audience doesn't matter. That's not the point of this. I'm doing a film criticism podcast. The premise of this show is that audience matters. I'm audience. And I love that an audience has developed around this show, around Movie Dawg. What I am saying, what I'm getting to here, is that I think there is a crisis in film criticism right now, in the way that we talk about movies. And I think it has something to do with caring more about the result than the act. And it's not just film criticism. It's everything. It's every type of discourse. The conditions of our culture, the conditions of the so-called attention economy, have created a tyranny of engagement. According to the attention economy, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one around to hear it, not only does it not make a sound, it's better off dead because it's a pathetic loser. Here's an ad that popped up on my Instagram feed this morning. And I'm not like, this isn't like a stand-up routine where I'm like, You know, the other day, a guy stopped me on the street, and it's a bit that you've been doing for 5 years. This actually popped up on my Instagram feed this morning. I swear. I'm just going to play a little bit of this.
This is called the fake cliff effect, and it just bought me another 15 seconds of your attention. This is called the snap effect, and it got my student Iris over 400,000 views. This is called the portal effect, and it just bought me 5 to 10 seconds of your attention. This is called the pole transition effect, and it got Jaren over 1.2 million views. I'm one of the guys who did visual effects for huge Hollywood movie campaigns like Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, Ant-Man, and tons of other Disney and Marvel films.
Now, for those of you who are just listening to this episode, I will give you a visual. This man who made this video, apparently he's one of the guys who did visual effects for several huge Hollywood movie campaigns. This guy is showing us some pretty asinine visual effects. And I'm not trying to be cruel here. I'm trying to accurately describe what I'm seeing. Some pretty asinine visual effects. In the first one, it looks like he's on a cliff and he's going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then he jumps backwards and it just sort of smash cuts to him in a field. He calls it the fake cliff effect. And for him, its value lies not in the effect itself, but in its ability to keep you from scrolling for at least another 5 to 10 seconds. Just like he knows that the snap effect, where he goes snap with his fingers and a sushi boat appears on the table in front of him, is valuable because it got Iris 400,000 views. This man is lost. He has no idea why he does the things that he does, except that they get engagement. This is called the castrato effect, and it just bought me 5 to 10 seconds of your time and got Eric 500,000 views for his cloud kitchen business. This man is lost. He can only judge things by their result. He has no values. And so to wash the memory of this man from my mind this morning, I then went and reread one of my favorite movie reviews of all time. I was already going to do this. I'm being a little artificial in the way I'm telling this story. I was already going to do this because I thought it'd be interesting to tie it into this week's episode. But I went and reread one of my favorite movie reviews of all time, Pauline Kael's review of Bonnie and Clyde, arguably the most influential movie review of all time. Pauline Kael's review of 1967's Bonnie and Clyde, Warren Beatty's dream project, directed by Arthur Penn, that finally found a way to Americanize the French New Wave and thus launch the new Hollywood era. But Bonnie and Clyde might not have done any of that. Might not have had nearly the impact, the cultural impact and artistic impact that it had, if not for Pauline Kael's review. Because when this movie came out in 1967, the vast majority of major film critics at the time did not like it. They did not like it because they didn't get it. And their reviews were puritanical and old-fashioned when you read them now. They found it to be grotesque and outrageous and glorified violence and so on and so forth. Pauline Kael, on the other hand, found it to be not only the best American movie since The Manchurian Candidate, which she says, The Manchurian Candidate came out 5 years earlier. So not only the best American movie in 5 years, but the start of a new spirit in American film. And rather than downplay her authentic passion for the movie, for fear of being alone in that opinion, she doubled down and wrote one of the most passionate and persuasive defenses of a movie you'll ever read. And her review was so passionate and so persuasive and so damning of a culture of film criticism that had become stale and ossified. Her review was so powerful that it actually shamed other film critics into reconsidering and recanting their own negative reviews. When has that ever happened in the history of movies? Joe Morgenstern, the film critic for Newsweek at the time, and I give him credit for this. He initially criticized Bonnie and Clyde, calling it a, quote, squalid shoot 'em up for the moron trade. I don't agree, but that's hilarious. The way people used to know how to talk about movies, even if they were wrong. A squalid shoot 'em up for the moron trade is what he initially called it. But then he printed a retraction a week later after reading Pauline Kael's review and after rewatching the movie. He printed a retraction in which he called his first review, quote, grossly unfair and regrettably inaccurate. Unbelievable. Pauline Kael's review of Bonnie and Clyde was responsible in its uncompromising honesty. It was responsible for a critical reappraisal of Bonnie and Clyde itself, and as a result, responsible for the explosion of the new Hollywood era that revolutionized the aesthetics and the subject matter of American movies forever. That is how film criticism should function, according to an internal compass, not an external compass. But unfortunately, film criticism and film discourse in the era of the attention economy has become dictated almost exclusively by the external compass of engagement. We can call it the Rupert Pupkin fallacy. More on that, plus a review of Project Hail Mary after the theme song.
The backbone of this country is the independent film critic. The power of movies must be protected. The best thing about movies is the feeling they give. It's a feeling I want to feel every day. Movie Dawg! Movie Dawg! Movie Dawg! Movie Dawg!
This is Movie Dawg, the weekly show that sinks its teeth into the present, the past, and the future of the movies. I'm Brett Boehm, a.k.a. the Georgia Movie Dawg. Go Dogs. And if you enjoy this show, if you're a fellow movie dog, I strongly encourage you to sign up for the Movie Dawg Patreon at patreon.com/Movie Dawg Show. It's always a good time to sign up for the Movie Dawg Patreon, but this week it is particularly a good time to sign up because there is something very, very exciting happening over on Patreon right now. It is the start of a new season of Weekend at Bergman's, all about the movies of the 1990s. That's right. The Philly movie freak and I are back doing what we do best, pitting art house movies versus popcorn movies in a fight to the death. And we have to be honest. We have to be honest. It's the rule. Now, this 90s season that we're doing is already off to a hot start. And we couldn't do it. Not only is it on Patreon, we couldn't do it without Patreon. Because the Patreon subscribers have done an incredible job, as always, in helping us to narrow down the matchups. We can't cover every movie of the 90s. There's way too many. But what do we got to cover? What's got to be in this season? Because at the end of the season, we will do one of our famous end-of-season tournaments to pick the ultimate movie of the 90s. And I don't want to get to the end of that tournament feeling like I left something out. Feeling like I left out a big one. Oh, we forgot to do Heat! It would never happen. But there's a less of a likelihood of that happening thanks to the incredible contributions of the Patreon members. They're keeping us honest. They're shouting out matchups. The Patreon is on fire right now. On fire with great film discourse. So if you're a fellow movie dog, go sign up for the Patreon. Go sign up for the Look, I'll give you two examples. I'll give you two examples of matchups that will potentially be in this season of Weekend at Bergman's. I'm not going to give you more than that. Because if you go to the Patreon right now, we've already posted our first part 1 of our selection show where we narrow down the matchups, choose the matchups. So I don't want to give away too much, but I'll give you two. Number 1, Saving Private Ryan versus Starship Troopers. How about that? Spielberg versus Verhoeven. Oh, how do you even compare those movies? The textures are so different. How do you even compare them? That'll be the fun of it. That'll be the episode. And which one will we like better? Whatever the answer is, the answer will be honest. And then what about this one? Thelma and Louise versus Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, baby. Come on. That's a good one. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. To find out the rest of the matchups as they develop, sign up for the Patreon. Check out our selection shows. There's already one up. We're doing part 2 this week. Will part 2 be enough? Will there need to be a part 3? We'll find out. And if you want to contribute your own suggestions to this season of Weekend at Bergman's, just sign up for the Patreon for free. You don't have to pay anything, and you can participate in our polls, like our poll, to figure out the matchups for Weekend at Bergman's. Just sign up for free. And then once these Weekend at Bergman's episodes start rolling out and you're getting updates and you're seeing, oh, here it is, Thelma and Louise versus Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. Well, I got to listen to that. Then you sign up for an account. Then you sign up for one of the tiers. But start for free if you want. That's fine. And thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the Patreon, who is on one of the tiers. The money that we get over there, I am not kidding about this. It is so crucial. It truly helps us to keep doing this show. And I personally appreciate it more than I could say. It helps me to keep doing this thing that I love with confidence and, very importantly, with a little bit of a budget. That really helps. So thank you. Thank you for your generous support and your incredible, thoughtful engagement. Not all engagement is corrosive. That's what makes the Patreon such a fun place to talk movies. And once again, that's patreon.com/moviedawgshow. Movie Dawg Show. Now, speaking of money, won't you please show me the money? And by the money, I mean the weekend box office returns, baby. There they are. What do we got? Wow. Okay. Project Hail Mary opened to a staggering, way beyond expectations, domestic box office total of $80.5 million in its opening weekend. 80.5! Plus, it made another 60.4 in international ticket sales for a worldwide opening weekend grand total of $141 million. That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal regardless of the movie, and it is beyond phenomenal for a non-franchise movie in the year 2026. In fact, I saw the great box office analyst Scott Mendelson, worth a follow on your socials. Scott Mendelson declared it the second biggest, quote, just a movie opening ever. The second biggest just a movie opening ever behind Oppenheimer's $82.5 million in July 2023. And by just a movie, he means not a franchise, not a big brand. And yes, it's based on a popular book, but it's not Spider-Man. Second biggest just a movie opening ever. And that's not the only record it set. Project Hail Mary is also the biggest opening for an American movie so far this year. Of course, we're just now getting into the blockbuster season. And it is the biggest opening ever for an Amazon MGM movie post their merger and post their recommitment to theatrical releases. And that part, the second part, is the key part. Amazon MGM went into 2026 with a big new plan. They're going to recommit to theatrical releases of their movies, investing over $1 billion in a robust domestic and international distribution arm that they say is capable of releasing 12 to 20 movies in theaters annually. This is huge in theory for the future of movies, because if Paramount purchases Warner Brothers, still TBD, but if Paramount purchases Warner Brothers, that will reduce the amount of major studio distributors by 1, and there was only 5 to begin with. And even though Paramount claims that their new hybrid company will continue to release the same amount of movies that Paramount and Warner Brothers would have released independent of each other, that's very doubtful. What will more than likely happen is what happened to Fox when Disney bought Fox a few years ago, which is that Fox started releasing significantly less movies because it got subsumed into a bigger operation. So, although it pains me to essentially root for big tech, if Amazon and MGM are able to have success with theatrical distribution, this could be a major factor in ensuring and protecting the survival of movie theaters. And not just Amazon MGM, Apple too. Apple had a huge hit last year with F1. If these tech companies who are now getting into movies and theatrical distribution, if they continue to invest in it because they see success in it, that's huge for the future of movie theaters. That's huge. That's huge. Particularly because up until Project Hail Mary, things had not been going well for Amazon MGM. The master plan had not been working out. Their first 3 theatrical releases this year, this big sort of test case year, were Chris Pratt's Mercy, total stink bomb. Chris Hemsworth's Crime 101, average, blah. And the government money laundering scheme disguised as a documentary, Melania. So before this weekend, the worry was that Amazon MGM would not have success with this plan and thus would probably back out of theatrical distribution just as quickly as they had jumped into it. But now, you not only have a success, you have a kind of signature movie, a kind of tentpole success. You're the Project Hail Mary studio now, baby. Now Jeff Bezos can finally look himself in the mirror and say, I did it. I'm a real boy. And gosh darn it, people like me. And unfortunately, in this case, that's good for the movies. So congrats to Project Hail Mary. Congrats to the whole team. And congrats on a savvy release date, because you're about to get another weekend with essentially no competition. Hoppers is starting to fade. Pixar's Hoppers. Ready or Not 2, the other big new release of this week, did a respectable $12 million worldwide on a budget of $14 million. But it didn't pose much of a threat to Project Hail Mary. It wasn't close. And then next week, I'm personally looking forward to this Zazie Beetz movie, They Will Kill You, which looks like Rosemary's Baby if Rosemary was more like the bride from Kill Bill. I'm looking forward to it, but it's a low-budget New Line release. It's not going to pose much of a threat to Project Hail Mary, which should be number 1 for a second straight week. In large part because it is enjoying some glowing praise. More on that later. Some glowing praise. I'm going to call it now. I'm saying Project Hail Mary has a 40% drop in week 2. 40% or less. 40% max drop, which is, as you know, if you listen to this show, very hard to do. Very hard to do. Very hard to do. But I think Project Hail Mary sees a drop of 40% or less through a combination of positive word of mouth, influencer marketing, repeat viewings. Project Hail Mary is not done making money, not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. It'll be interesting to see how far this little spaceship goes. But what about the movie? What about the thing itself? Let's talk about Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary is based on the popular science fiction novel of the same name written by Andy Weir, who also wrote The Martian. The screenplay was written by Drew Goddard, who also wrote the screenplay for the movie adaptation of The Martian. So he's locked in. He gets it. Project Hail Mary was directed and produced by the duo of Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who have an impressive filmography of crowd pleasers. Movies like the Lego Movie, the 21 Jump Street movies. But they haven't directed a movie since 2014's 22 Jump Street. They, if you remember, got caught up in that whole Solo mess, that Han Solo movie, Solo. They were the original directors who were hired, but then they either got fired or they quit or some combination because of creative differences. And that kind of thing, man, when you get mixed up in Marvel world or Lucasfilm world and you don't end up making the movie, that can eat up years of your career. That can really throw you off your axis. Just look at Edgar Wright. Hasn't look at the filmography. Hasn't been the same since the whole Ant-Man debacle. But Lord and Miller have been keeping busy in these intervening years, even though they haven't directed anything. They've most notably they wrote and produced the beloved Spider-Verse animated movies for Sony. And that's pretty much Lord and Miller's thing. They take IP, whether it's Spider-Man, Project Hail Mary, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs they did, fucking Legos. They take IP and they make these, to their credit, improbably entertaining, high-energy, crowd-pleasing box office winners that, you know, they are more sophisticated in their charms than your typical IP Drek, which is a pretty low bar to clear, but they clear it. Lord and Miller typically clear it. They clear that bar. Now, Project Hail Mary is about a middle school science teacher who was run out of academia because he had some controversial theories about water. Apparently, he thought water was responsible for 9/11. So they ran him out of academia, kicked him out of Purdue, or I don't know where he was teaching. And then years later, he is called upon, along with thousands of other scientists on Earth. He's called upon to try and figure out why the sun is rapidly cooling down to the extent that Earth is facing a catastrophic crop shortage within 30 years that will kill half the human population. And then, after a series of events, he ends up being the only guy left on a research spaceship that has been sent to the only nearby star that isn't rapidly dying to try and figure out why. And when he gets there, he finds he's not alone. There's a cool little alien dude who he names Rocky, who has also traveled to this star for the same reason. And together they learn how to communicate and how to work together, and they share their findings to save their respective planets. The movie is told in a non-linear style. Ooh. So it opens with our hero, whose name is Ryland Grace. Ryland Grace wakes up alone on this spaceship with retrograde amnesia and has no idea what he's doing there, and then he has to start to piece together the story of how he got there via flashbacks. So that's what it's about and how it's about. Now, I knew going into Project Hail Mary that a lot of people were going gaga for this movie. I knew some were even calling it a masterpiece, capital M. More on that later. So I'm not going to pretend that I was not aware of that. But I have also gotten pretty good at blocking that stuff out and just watching the movie. It's very important to me to just watch the movie. So even though I knew all that, I didn't go into Project Hail Mary with my knives sharpened. I didn't go in saying, oh, masterpiece, eh? If anything, I was hopeful that it was. I love a cinematic masterpiece. But now, having seen it, I can say that Project Hail Mary is, in my opinion, not a masterpiece. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it doesn't have stuff going for it. But I do want to start with the absurdity of calling it a masterpiece because of how many blatant and obvious flaws it has. It's a weird movie to go out of your way to call a masterpiece. It would be like saying that former Hawks shooting guard Joe Johnson is the greatest basketball player of all time. It's such an absurd hyperbole that is so easily contradicted by the evidence that it's more of an insult than a compliment. Like if I went up to Joe Johnson, if I saw Joe Johnson at Publix and I went up to him and said, Joe, I love you. And in fact, I think you're the greatest basketball player of all time. He'd be like, you know, my career scoring average is 16, right? That being said, I love Joe Johnson. I love Joe Johnson. ISO Joe. The Hawks should retire his number, but he's not the greatest basketball player of all time. And Project Hail Mary is not a masterpiece for the following reasons. Number one, and I rarely say this. This is not often a problem for me, but it was here. Project Hail Mary is obviously and embarrassingly way too long. Way too long. And that has nothing to do with the runtime. I want to be clear. That has nothing to do with the 2.5 hour runtime. Plenty of movies earn a 2.5 hour runtime. It has everything to do with the unnecessary treading of water and repetition of beats and that wasn't the ending? Which I said twice in my head in Act 3 of this movie. Oh, getting up out of my seat. Ooh, that wasn't okay. That was not the ending. All right. Oh, this is not the ending? And all of that adds at least 30 minutes of runtime to the movie that just didn't have to be there. Did not have to be there. And the reason I bring this up is because Project Hail Mary is not overlong with plot or with character development. It's not overlong because it's trying to do something. It's overlong because it's obsessed with its own cute bits. This movie is so in love with itself. And I don't find that to be a charming quality on the whole. This movie is so in love with itself that it ceases to see itself. There's a scene where Ryland and Rocky the alien are saying goodbye to each other. And they not only drag it out forever, they do like 3 different fun versions of a goodbye thing to the point where I was like, did you mean to include all 3? I think you shot them so you could pick one. Weren't you supposed to just pick one? Why did you put all 3 in? This isn't a choose your own adventure novel. You got to narrow it down for me. You got to make some choices. And I don't want to look. It's great. Lord and Miller love their movie. They love this movie that they made. That's great. I'm happy for you. It's almost not on them. Somebody else should have staged an intervention at some point. Somebody should have invited Lord and Miller to a party, to a cast party, and then locked the door and sat them down and told them to your face, guys, it's time to end the movie. It's over. It's been over for 10 minutes. I know you like it. I know you like it here. but you have to leave. You have to end this now. Project Hail Mary, way too long. Number 2. And this is totally a personal take. You might not agree with me, and that's fine. But I found the humor to be a little grating. I think that Lord and Miller are very competent in the way that they film comedic dialogue, very snappy the way that they film comedy in their movies. But I don't think they are very inspired in the way that they film comedy. There were solid laughs in this movie, but they were also safe and basic and familiar laughs. And that's fine. Again, that's fine, but it becomes a bit grating after 2.5 hours. And again, I'm not saying the movie was unfunny. I'm saying I'd give it a B for comedy. But if comedy is one of the main things you're doing and you get a B for it, then your movie is disqualified from the masterpiece discussion. I mean, that's it right there. The comedy also is occasionally, B is maybe a little generous. The comedy is also occasionally at odds with the tone of the movie. There's 1 or 2 moments where I'm like, not now, not here. It doesn't work for the rhythm. It's not even a great joke. Not here. Let's just cut that one. There's a specific sequence late in the movie where a big emotional moment is followed by a totally unnecessary flashback that has a lot of like, that's not a thing kind of jokes. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. And it just sort of cheapens and flattens the moment. It's like, why just cut that? Just cut that scene. Speaking of which, number 3, the non-linear narrative. I found the non-linear narrative to be pretty compelling in the beginning of the movie. As you know, I was kind of surprised that's where we started. And for a movie that had a lot of marketing and I felt like I knew a lot about it going in, it was impressive to surprise me with your opening shot. I liked that. The opening shot is Ryland waking up on this spaceship. It's like the opening of Alien, okay. But I was not expecting that in this movie. Ryland waking up on the spaceship and he's been in this sort of induced coma, hibernation because the journey is so long. But he has this retrograde amnesia, and so he has to sort of piece together and figure out why he's on this spaceship through these flashbacks that start to sort of flicker into his brain in fragments. I liked that. It felt like they were using the nonlinear narrative to add this sort of detective story element to the movie. There was a purpose to it. I liked it. But as the movie develops, the flashbacks start to matter less and less, particularly when the Ryan, I'm calling him Ryan now, Ryland. Is it Ryland? I already forgot this guy's name. Ryland Grace, right? Is that what I said? Ryland Grace, yes. Particularly as the Ryland and Rocky friendship starts to develop, and that becomes kind of the heart of the movie, these flashbacks start to matter less and less, and they ultimately don't have the big payoff that you're waiting for to justify the device. It's a device that starts out strong and then starts to taper off. And yes, there is an attempt to pay it off. There is a twist. If you're listening, I'm using quote fingers. I'm not sure if I articulated that enough. There is a twist that gets revealed in one of the later flashbacks. But it's kind of not a real twist in the sense that it didn't change anything for me. And I haven't read the book, so I didn't know about this plot point. So it was a twist in the sense that I didn't know it was coming. But it was one of those twists that wasn't impactful in any way because they just make something literal that I had already taken for granted thematically and figuratively in the story. And I'll clarify what I mean. I'm going to reveal the twist, which is not really much of a twist. It's not going to ruin the movie for you, but I will give you 3 seconds to It's not that big of a twist. 1, it turns out that Ryland Grace refused to go on this mission. He didn't want to go on this mission. And in fact, he said, I'm not going. And so the United States government, or whoever the powerful entity was, they had to forcibly sedate him and put him into this coma without his consent and just put him on the ship and then just fire the ship into space. And so the reason for his amnesia is they forced him to do this, and he doesn't remember that until the very end. The reason that's not an impactful twist, particularly coming so late in the movie, is because that's the premise of the entire movie. The premise of the entire movie is that he's a reluctant hero. I can't do this. I'm just a middle school teacher. That's his whole character. That's the whole movie. And sure, I didn't realize how reluctant he was to do this, but it's just a twist of degree, not of kind. It doesn't reorient the movie in any compelling way. I didn't even think of it as a twist until after I left the movie and I started reading reviews and they're all talking about the big twist, and I was like, the big twist? Oh, that? And because the, quote, big twist, unquote, is one of the reasons for the nonlinear narrative, its lack of impact prevents the nonlinear narrative from really paying off in a big way. And again, it's fine. It's fun in the beginning, but it doesn't pay off in the way that it would need to qualify Project Hail Mary as anything close to a masterpiece. Number 4... it's a Lord and Miller movie, so there's a lot of pick-me bullshit in the movie that was annoying to me. Maybe this is also a personal gripe. Project Hail Mary wants you to like it, and that's fine, I guess. It's a big-budget movie. Of course it wants you to like it. But there are some specific moments that are, to use this word again, grating in how shamelessly they want to score points with the audience. Points that they haven't earned, and that's kind of the point. That's the point of the points. They're unearned. The biggest example of this is a scene where Ryland and Rocky are sending 4 mini ships with samples back to their home planets, and these samples are going to help save their respective suns and thus their respective civilizations. The 4 mini ships, you see little name tags, little sort of, nameplates on them as they are flying away into space. The 4 mini ships are called John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And as they are launching into space, the soundtrack plays the Beatles song "Two of Us." We're on our way home. We're going home. And right now you might be asking, so what? What's the problem, Scrooge? What, you don't like the Beatles? You don't like the Beatles, Mr. Grinch? I love the Beatles. And I know this little plot point is taken from the book, but here's the thing. This movie had not even referenced the Beatles at all in the first 2 hours, until this wildly out of nowhere Beatles-centric scene that they just sort of force into the movie. So this wasn't a callback to anything. Unless I'm missing something, and there was a lot. This is a fairly dense movie for as poppy as it is. I don't remember Ryan Gosling ever being like, well, I love the Beatles. This isn't a callback to anything. Meanwhile, the movie effectively had established the movie Rocky as a reference point that it returns to in interesting ways that do pay off. That was the big kind of cultural illusion or touchstone of the movie. But this freaking Beatles scene was just shameless and pathetic. It was like if they just slapped an adorable cat video on the screen for 10 seconds. So you're like, yeah, this is adorable, but you don't get credit for this. And honestly, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even It was worse than that. It felt like when they play a Beatles song in an Apple commercial or something. That's what it felt like. Because the power of the Beatles didn't carry through because the moment is so artificially orchestrated to appeal. All right. I didn't like the shamelessness of the Beatles thing. Moving on. Number 5. And this is a big one. This is maybe the biggest one. And it puts me at odds with the general consensus as I understand it about this movie. But I have to be honest. I was not impressed by the aesthetics of Project Hail Mary. The visual compositions and visual effects, the sound design, the production design. I don't think it was bad, but I don't think it was the aesthetics of a cinematic masterpiece. It was not nearly singular or visionary enough to be the aesthetics of a cinematic masterpiece. In all honesty, I thought the aesthetics of this movie were average. Almost intentionally average in their recycling of one familiar spaceship motif after another. And if you watch this in IMAX, you might be saying, what the hell are you talking about? The aesthetics were mind-blowing, you ass. To which I would say, don't confuse an expensive aesthetic with an artful aesthetic. Amazon gave Lord & Miller a $200 million production budget for this movie. $200 million. With that kind of money, you're going to get the best of everything and the best people, the best VFX people, the best production designers. And they're going to get whatever they want in terms of scope and materials and location. But money can't buy taste. It can't. What do we always say on this show? Composition don't cost a thing. It don't cost a thing. You can have all the money in the world. You still got to find a compelling composition. And Lord & Miller, in my opinion, don't find them in this movie. And look, I love that you might have heard this if you read about the movie because they talk about it all the freaking time. They didn't use any green screens. They used practical effects. Rocky was a puppet. I love all of that. That's what $200 million allows you to do. All of that's great. That's all great. But without killer compositions, without a painterly eye for light and color, without interesting uses of negative space, all that money and all those well-meaning methods are for naught. I'll give you 2 examples of this. The moment that everyone keeps posting online as an example of Project Hail Mary's visual grandeur is this moment right here. I'm putting it up, and I'll describe it if you're just listening. Ryan Gosling's in a spacesuit, and he's outside the ship, and the camera is behind him, and everything's moving forward, and it's all floating towards this swirling greenish, orangish, gaseous planet. And then the light spectrum shifts to infrared. I don't know. I might not be describing the science correctly, but it shifts and the whole shot turns to reds and pinks, and you suddenly see all of these formerly invisible organisms floating everywhere that look like points of light. And there's a sort of needle drop or a sound cue or something on the soundtrack that coincides with this switch. If this was a wow moment for you, I don't want to take that away from you. Aesthetics are subjective. I'm just speaking for myself. For me, this was not a particularly sophisticated or meaningful cinematic visual. For me, this was a screensaver. This was a Coldplay music video. This is a classic case of too much happening and not enough happening. It's the visual equivalent of that unearned Beatles needle drop. It is a visual move that is desperate to be liked but absent of vision. And I'll be honest, it kind of passed right through me. I think I was like, huh. And then I saw everyone sharing it online and going, oh my God, it's 2001. A second example, silence. There are several attempts in Project Hail Mary at incorporating negative space into the aesthetics of this movie in various ways. They do attempt it. But it's just the same trick played over and over again, which is they will do a hard cut to the exterior of the spaceship, and the soundtrack will just go deathly quiet for a few seconds. And it's like this, the silence of outer space. Okay, fine. The problem here, again, is one of the big aesthetic problems in the movie. It's a familiar and conventional move that is repeated over and over and over again. And they never sit with the silence long enough to make it matter. Lord and Miller can only abide about 4 seconds of the silence of outer space. And then they're like, okay, cut back to the funny dialogue, please. We've got 4 pages to get through before lunch. And you're just never going to find a meaningful visionary aesthetic in your outer space movie if you're that bored by silence and negative space. Lord and Miller are not just bored by it, they're terrified by it. After 4 seconds, they're like, oh God, we gotta do something. They're gonna fall asleep. And I think the reason that they're terrified of negative space and silence is because this movie, as with a lot of their movies, has no subtext. Their movies are all text, all surface, everything pushed to the front. Isn't this cool? Please like me. I can do more. I can do more. I can do more. I can do more. They are terrified of silence because it exposes the emptiness of their aesthetic and the conventionality of their themes. And to be honest, they're right. They're right. I don't blame them for cutting away from the silence at the first opportunity, because every time they cut to the silence, even though it just lasted 4 seconds, I found that I didn't have much to think about. I wasn't sitting there like wrestling with the themes of the movie. I was just waiting for the movie star and the puppet to return. So, where do we stand? That is a lot of things that I personally did not like about Project Hail Mary. So why am I giving this movie 3 stars? 3 stars for good. Well, because it was good. And overall, I had a fine time. How? How could it be good when I've been doing nothing but deride it for the last however many minutes? Couple reasons. Sandra Hüller's a reason. The great Sandra Hüller. Very cool to see her in this sort of big budget sci-fi movie. She kills it. She doesn't know how to give a bad performance. Lionel Boyce from The Bear is really fun in this, really good in this. I liked Rocky. Rocky was cool. Rocky the Alien. But at the end of the day, there is one reason, and one reason only, why I'm giving this movie 3 stars for good, despite how thoroughly and completely it wasn't my kind of movie. And that reason is Ryan Gosling. This guy, Ryan Gosling, just keeps one-upping himself as a movie star. And right now, I don't know where the ceiling is. I don't know how far this goes. And I would not have thought of him as Hanks-esque before this movie. It felt like he was on a slightly different path. But in Project Hail Mary, he really unlocks his inner Hanks, his inner Tom Hanks. And maybe that's part of his destiny. Every generation needs a Hanks, needs that A-list actor that is simultaneously relatable and stratospheric. This movie is a test of how thoroughly Ryan Gosling can carry a movie. Because we know he can carry a movie. We know he can steal scenes in a movie. But how much can he carry? And the answer, according to his performance in Project Hail Mary, is quite a lot. As much as you need him to, all the way. And that's where the Hanks comparisons are starting to feel apt. in terms of the performance is interesting because in terms of the measurable, quantifiable moves that he's doing, it's a maximalist performance. It's slapstick. It's funny. It's sad. It's nonstop patter. It's props. It's glasses. It's that Fox sweater that everyone's posting about. It's the novelty t-shirts. On paper, it's a maximalist performance. And yet Gosling's strength, his superpower, is how effortlessly he can pull off a maximalist performance so that it never feels like a maximalist performance. It doesn't have the sort of exaggerated weight and volume of a maximalist performance. It's effortless. It's cool. It's relaxed. That's hard to do. His performance makes a otherwise flawed piecemeal movie kind of hum, kind of move. Which is even harder to do. It's crazy how valuable his performance is to the rhythms of this movie. Gosling is able to center himself around this calm confidence that Lord and Miller never get within 10 feet of as directors. Lord and Miller are perpetually terrified that they're not doing enough. Whereas Gosling doesn't even have a word for that specific type of anxiety. He doesn't speak that language. And so while I'm sure that Lord and Miller and Jeff Bezos and everyone else remotely connected with this movie are going to take a victory lap, the only one that really deserves it is Ryan Gosling and Sandra Hüller, but mostly Ryan Gosling. He is so watchable that he smooths over almost all the flaws that I brought up previously, or at least sort of cancels them out. That being said, it's not like he doesn't cause the movie to undergo any sort of change in state, to use science terminology. He doesn't alter the composition of the movie. He doesn't make it transcendent. That would be near impossible. This is still a very formulaic and conventional movie. He just makes it, honestly, the best version of itself, given its flaws. Which brings me to the critical response to this movie, which has been overall hyperbolic, to say the least, in its praise. And I know the resistance is gathering, as it always does. I've seen little pockets of backlash, but I'm not saying the backlash is any more correct. The overwhelming response, though, is still hyperbolic praise. And if you, I dipped a toe into threads, if you dare to veer from that, prepare to get blasted by the most obnoxious, cinematically illiterate people on the internet. And I'm not saying that if you like this movie, you're cinematically illiterate. I'm saying that if you are going into the comments to tell people that didn't like it that they're idiots, then you are cinematically illiterate. Because I'm not surprised that this movie has its fans. That's not what surprises me. I am surprised by the universality and ardor of the fandom, considering what I saw on the screen. USA Today called this movie the first great movie of 2026. No, that would be the first. That would be 28 years later, The Bone Temple. And by my count, there have been 8 movies better than Project Hail Mary this year, maybe 9. The President's Cake, Bone Temple, Pillion, The Bride, Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, Nirvana, The Band, The Show, The Movie, The Wrecking Crew. Project Hail Mary isn't even the best Amazon MGM release this year. My Father's Shadow was very good. Honestly, maybe Send Help. That would be number 9. So there's either 8 or 9 movies that I would say are better than Project Hail Mary. Which is great. A lot of great movies out this year. A lot of people have thrown around the M word, masterpiece. From film journalist Scott Menzel to an account I found on Instagram, Film Probe, which has 156,000 followers. They called it a masterpiece. A masterpiece. Josh Gad also called it a masterpiece, in case you were still on the fence as to the validity of that opinion. Project Hail Mary has been compared to E.T. and 2001: A Space Odyssey. And not by anonymous social media accounts, by people with big movie podcasts who should know better and have more discipline than that. So the question is, what is going on here? What is happening? One thing that's going on that I don't think is actually a major factor, but is going on, is that influencers are getting paid to positively review the movie in the grandest terms possible. That's happening, but A, that always happens, and B, on Project Hail Mary, that they're not the loudest voices in the room. I think that a lot of the people who are going out of their way to praise this movie online are not being financially compensated for it by Amazon MGM. So I'm going to rule that out. So what is going on here? Even though I don't think that Project Hail Mary is in the same cinematic class as E.T., because you know I love E.T., you know I love that little guy. I do think that the release of E.T. in the so-called Summer of Spielberg does provide the most useful analog for figuring out what's going on with all these Project Hail Mary reviews. In the summer of 1982, E.T., which was one of two movies that Spielberg had a hand in, along with producing Poltergeist, hence the Summer of Spielberg, E.T. was everywhere in the summer of 1982. It was melting the hearts of the entire world, unifying audiences from Roger Ebert to Pauline Kael to frickin' Martin Amis wrote an essay. The famously irascible Martin Amis wrote an essay about how much he loved E.T. Everyone loved E.T. in the summer of 1982. It was this sublime cultural moment of rediscovered hope and joy that was experienced collectively. So much so that everyone hated John Carpenter's The Thing when it came out a couple weeks later, and Blade Runner for that matter. But they really hated The Thing because they were like, "What, John? What are you doing? We're doing this. We're doing rediscover our childhoods. We're doing nostalgia. We're doing joy and optimism and hope. We're not doing Demon Dog. What are you doing, John? This isn't the mood." Everyone was still in E.T. mindset. They didn't want The Thing. They wanted to stay in their little E.T. bubbles. Likewise, I think the reason for these hyperbolic reactions to Project Hail Mary is that everyone desperately wants an E.T. right now. They want a hopeful and sublime movie. They want a unifying cinematic experience. They want a light that cuts through the darkness. The problem is, Project Hail Mary is not that movie. It's not E.T. It's not a masterpiece. And there is, at the risk of overstating, at the risk of being hyperbolic myself, but I do believe this, there is a real danger on a cultural level, on a critical level, when we start pretending that a movie is something that it's not just because we want it to be that thing. That's a slippery slope. That's a real slippery slope. Take this guy, for example, this guy that I found on the internet. Paul Anleitner, who writes and speaks on the it says in his bio, the intersection of religion and culture, science and philosophy. He has a book out called Based on a True Story. And his big thing, his big premise, the philosophy that he's staken his whole career on, is that we are in the middle of a vibe shift. We are in the middle of a cultural vibe shift from, quote, ironic cynicism to, quote, post-ironic sincerity. The ability, he says, to stare at the apocalypse in front of you and be hopeful instead of a doomer. Oh, don't be a doomer. Be hopeful. We are in the middle of a cultural vibe shift from ironic cynicism to post-ironic sincerity. First of all, this is not valid cultural criticism. This is just cliche. This is plagiarism. This is a trite assessment of the cultural moment that people have been proposing for years now, decades. Oh, we're moving from ironic cynicism to post-ironic sincerity. This has been around forever. This take. The problem is it keeps reoccurring. People keep having this take because the horrors keep outpacing the optimism. This vibe shift never fully happens. But Project Hail Mary was obviously a huge moment for this guy, Paul Antleitner. And oh, baby, he's been milking it for all it's worth on Twitter. Quote, "If you see Project Hail Mary this weekend, I hope you'll remember how I told you over 3 years ago that stuff like this was going to explode in pop culture." Wow. Got a real Nostradamus on our hands here. What a risky prediction. What a risky prediction. Stuff like this. Stuff like this. A couple tweets later, he claims that David Foster Wallace would have loved Project Hail Mary because of this David Foster Wallace quote that he takes out of context. "What passes for hip, cynical transcendence of sentiment is really some kind of fear of being really human." Even out of context, the guy is good. The guy is good. What passes for hip, cynical transcendence of sentiment is really some kind of fear of being really human. Now, that just proves that this Paul Antleitner guy is just plagiarizing other people, recycling and oversimplifying other people's ideas. B, David Foster Wallace would not have loved Project Hail Mary. He would have thought it was fine. The problem here with these hyperbolic Project Hail Mary reviews is not that optimism or hope are bad, or even that they're unattainable in the cultural moment or anything like that. The problem is the exploitation of false optimism and false hope as a way of ignoring the very real problems of this historical moment that have made it feel apocalyptic and nihilistic. And that's what this response to Project Hail Mary proves. Not that the movie is a masterpiece, but that people are so desperate to trick themselves into optimism, they'll take whatever they can get right now, whatever's available. Rocky and Ryan? Great. Everything's going to be fine now. We got Rocky and Ryan. This tweet right here in particular sums it up for me. And this is not from this Paul Antleitner guy. This is from another account that I'm cropping out. This tweet sums it up for me. How it genuinely feels to walk out of the movies after seeing Project Hail Mary and feeling hope instead of doomerism about the future. And they chose a GIF of John Travolta walking down the street at the beginning of Saturday Night Fever. This is actually a work of art. This should be in it. This is the only masterpiece that I've come across this week. How it feels to walk out of Project Hail Mary and feel hope instead of doomerism. And they chose a GIF of Tony from Saturday Night Fever. By all accounts, just a disgusting asshole. And I'm a fan of Saturday Night Fever, but Tony he's a creep. He's a worm. That is a masterpiece of a tweet. An unintentional masterpiece. Just be honest, people. Just be honest. That's all it comes down to. Be honest about what you see on the screen. Be honest to yourself. Be honest about yourself and what you feel and what you think. Just be honest. That's what film criticism is missing in 2026. Stop hunting clicks. Stop hunting engagement. Stop either trolling or mindlessly reflecting consensus. Don't be a troll. Don't be a stan. Don't be a sycophant. Don't pretend that a movie is what it isn't. Be honest. Just be honest. And the reward for your honesty will be, did you see what the movie's sentimental value did to the Philly Movie Freak on our Best of 2025 episodes on Patreon? Did you see what that movie did to him? It reduced the freak to tears. Why? Because he is honest and he is patient. He doesn't pretend to like movies just to have movies that he likes. He's honest and he's patient, and his reward is that every once in a while, a couple times a year, you don't have to wait forever. You're not Penelope in Ithaca waiting for Matt Damon to get home. Every once in a while, a couple times a year, you get a sentimental value. You get a sentimental value. But the only way that you fully appreciate the sentimental values, and this is the freak's choice. For me, it would not have been sentimental value. The only way you fully appreciate these movies when they come along is that you haven't just been throwing out the masterpiece term like it's going out of business. Masterpiece this, masterpiece that. And then you're just lost. You're lost. I guarantee that the freak was feeling something way more powerful and meaningful about sentimental value than Josh Gad felt about Project Hail Mary. And it's not everyone. It's not everyone. I want to give a big shout out to Peter Bradshaw at The Guardian, Justin Chang at The New Yorker, Roger Daniels at RobertEbert.com. RogerEbert.com. It says Robert Ebert in my notes. Is it maybe Robert Daniels and then RogerEbert.com? I don't know. I have 20 pages of notes for this episode. There's going to be something wrong in there. These three critics, in my opinion, gave measured and insightful reviews of Project Hail Mary. And none of their reviews panned it, by the way, but they weren't hyperbolic in the other direction either. They didn't get lost in the hype. Don't get lost. That's the number one rule in 2026. Don't get lost. Your compass is on the inside. It's not on the outside. Follow that compass inside and you won't get lost. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Movie Dawg. This has been a true thrill doing this show. And next week, oh baby, the hits keep on coming. This is going to be very interesting because we've got They Will Kill You, the movie I was referencing earlier with Zazie Beetz. Looks sort of like a Rosemary's Baby thing, but if Rosemary was the bride from Kill Bill, it's like what if Rosemary's Baby was like a Tarantino revenge, kill 'em all thriller. There's also Ready or Not 2, which I haven't seen yet. There's Forbidden Fruits. I mean, all three female-led horror movies, horror thrillers. Love that. Super down for that. There's something there. Let's see where it goes. Let's see. Who knows what next episode's going to be? I can't wait to find out. I can't wait. And in the meantime, big stuff happening on Patreon, i.e. a new season of Weekend at Bergman's. The 90s. We got our first selection show up. We're going to do another selection episode this week. You're not going to want to miss it. And all you got to do is sign up for free, and then you can start chiming in the polls. What movies should we include in this season? And then when you see your suggestion come up in an episode, you're going to say, they got me. You know what? They got me. They got me. Let me do the $5 tier. Let me try the $5 tier. I got to hear this episode. And then you're going to listen to it and you're going to say, well, let me see what these guys look like. Let me do the $10. Let me see what the vibe is in the room. That's how it happens. That's how we get you. But once we got you, you're family. You're family, baby. You're in the Movie Dawg family, and that's where you want to be if you're a movie dog, is with your fellow movie dogs. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Bye.